So I'm sitting here staring at the XRP chart like it's a bomb timer in an action movie, and every candle is just another beep, except nobody knows whether this thing is about to explode upwards or fizzle out. Tick, tock, and the bears are sweating bullets. Now, this might just shock you, but I'm not a financial advisor and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile and you could lose all the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. Your investments are entirely your responsibility. And you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses. And this video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Okay, so that's the disclaimer detonated. Now let's wire up the real story. So picture this, right? It's 6 AM in Dubai time, and I've got a mug of jet fuel coffee in one hand and my phone in the other. And one of you kind of brilliant troublemakers in our free educational Discord, link in the description, come on over, the memes are spicy. This guy pings me with, bro, look at 𝗕𝗓𝗃's latest falling wedge. I nearly snorted my coffee because, across the room of course, because the falling wedge, more like falling off a cliff wedge, right? Anyway, jokes aside, I then zoomed in and suddenly it wasn't just a freefall, it was a coiled spring begging for a release. So you can roll back the tape to November 2024, right? XRP was lounging around 50 cents like a crazy cat on a sunny windowsill. Nobody cared until bam, rocket engines lit, and in just 8 weeks, it launched to $3.40. That's 600%. Now, my group chat, of course, turned into an emergency room, heartbeats spiking, cap lock syllables flying, and you remember the panic, right? Well, folks are kind of digging through couch cushions for extra dry powder, convinced $3 was just a kind of scenic viewpoint on the road to Valhalla. Then reality showed up like that one aunt who's always kind of asking you, how your crypto coupons are doing. And price recoiled, bulls kind of licked their wounds, and we've been kind of itching kind of downwards inside this narrowing tunnel ever since. And that, my friends, is the infamous falling wedge, right? Price making lower highs, lower lows, but the corridor narrows, building pressure, and historically, bam, breakout north, right? Except history doesn't just ring a bell before it moves. So we've all kind of been stuck watching this thing coil up for months. Now, 𝗕𝗓𝗃 Crypto, you can think of him as the kind of chart whisperer, just popped up with a fresh diagram, and he's tacked in a bright red ticking clock emoji on top of it, and he wrote the following: TikTok bears. The translation here is that if you're short, maybe you want to keep a kind of getaway car idling in the background. Now, here is the juicy geometry. The upper trend line, which currently is around $2.28, has been smacking price down like grandma swatting flies at the picnic. The lower trend line, that's hovering near $1.47 and has been acting like a trampoline, keeping bullish dreams alive. Now, every bounce kind of feels weaker, but, hold up. Diminishing distance means it takes less juice, right? Less volume, less FOMO to claw past the resistance. So you got to think of it like tightening a guitar string then. Pluck it and the note jumps an octave. So let me kind of walk you through my morning brain math then here, right? XRP trading at, a point of recording, $2.24. Market cap, a chunky 131 billion. To kind of break that $2.28 line, we need what? A 2% nudge? Now that's kind of the crypto equivalent of a polite cough. Yet it hasn't happened yet because liquidity's sunbathing on the sidelines. Now, 𝗕𝗓𝗃 suggests a quick kind of dip maybe towards the $1.90 to $2 liquidity box. Might actually just be what's needed to spark the thing off. Now, that zone is basically the water balloon kids that are holding above the bear's head then, right? The bears think that they're in control and splash, suddenly there's liquid courage everywhere and the crowd is cheering. But there's a darker basement. You slip below $1.47 and the wedge breaks south. That's not a dip then, that's the floor falling away. Now, last time that we kind of flirted with $1.50, I swear I could smell the panic sweat through my screen. Now, my buddy, Lucas, is a veteran trader. He called me from his car because he couldn't stand watching at his desk. And he says, if we kind of lose 147, I'm nuking positions, he said. And it's a harsh but realistic, way of looking at it. The market's memory, of course, is long, but when it comes to the pain, and yet statistics, they love the bulls here, right? Falling wedges, they break upwards roughly 68% of the time, according to the bulk of chart lore. So give or kind of take a fudge factor, depending on whose kind of back-tested spreadsheet you believe, and the longer the squeeze, the bigger the pop. So I kind of call it the champagne bottle principle, right? Keep twisting the wire cage. Eventually, the cork shoots across the room and dents the drywall, right? XRP has been aging in that champagne prison for half a year. The carbonation is going to be off the charts. Now, do you remember mid-May's fake out? Price actually breached the wedge at $2.65. Traders triggered alerts, Twitter erupted, and then whoosh, it fell right back like a cat realizing the balcony rail is actually too narrow. So, what happened? Well, it failed breakout. That failed breakout. It wasn't a waste entirely. It was actually kind of recognition, if you will, of the resistance area. It kind of shows us where the sellers are camping and where the liquidity dried up and how thin the order books turned at the moment that enthusiasm waned. So you can cue the present then, right? Volume's been creeping higher for 4 sessions straight, right? There's nothing monstrous about it, but that is enough that you can kind of hear a faint rumble like a freight train miles down the track. Now, market sentiment index for XRP nudged from 48 to 55. That's neutral to slightly greedy territory. Still miles from euphoria, right? So perfect storm conditions? Well, that's the crowd's curious but not overcrowded, right? Shorts are comfy but not panicked, and that wedge apex is basically tomorrow. So here's the scene then, right? Last night I hopped onto the Blofin exchange, yes, the exchange with our kind of affiliate link in the description, and clicking it literally helps keep the channel caffeinated. So thank you kindly if you do go ahead and set up an account there. And what I did is I checked the open interest on XRP perpetuals. It's rising, but funding rates still hugging zero. So what does that mean? What's the translation? Well, the leverage is creeping in, but nobody's actually paying crazy premiums yet. So smart money is sniffing the opportunity and dumb money is just not awake. And that's the kind of moment that the match is most dangerous because the hay is dry. Okay, we've spoken a lot about numbers here, so let's humanize this, right? Imagine you're kind of planning a road trip across the desert, right? You fill the tank, you load up on snacks, you cue the podcasts, but the weather app does warn you there might be some thunderstorms ahead. So what do? Do you cancel, or do you pin your hopes on that kind of slither of blue sky that you can see on the horizon? Now, XRP holders have been living on that metaphor since January, right? Every red candle is another lightning flash. Every rumor of an ETF or a liquidity corridor or even a central bank pilot using ODL corridors, that's the rainbow teasing them onwards. Now, I remember early March when my cousin Jess, normally a sensible lady, accountant, wears beige, text me a rocket emoji. That was it, just a rocket emoji. And she finally kind of bought her first bag of XRP after years of side-eyeing at my kind of crypto chatter. Now, when the price kind of sagged to $1.80, she called me, voice quivering. Did I just buy the top, she says? And I told her, right, what I always tell any new travelers, volatility is the toll booth that you're going to pay to ride the innovation highway. Sometimes the toll is spare change. Sometimes it's your left kidney. She laughed. Mostly. Now, statistically speaking, retests in a falling wedge pattern kind of gives extra oomph, right? Grab liquidity at $1.90 bounce, breach, confirm our support, then launch, right? It's textbook. So if that plays out, eGrag's pie in the sky target is $20. And that $20 target, I guess, resurrects. Now, that might sound outrageous until you actually kind of back calculate. Now, a $1.5 trillion market cap, right? Bitcoin's done it. Ethereum's flirted with it, right? In a kind of frothy alt season mania with real world utility headlines global settlement rails, bank partnerships, $1.5 trillion, it doesn't look insane. It just looks like 2021 deja vu, but with better haircut. But I am not here to sprinkle hopium without calories. Risks are everywhere. The SEC appeal still kind of lurks like sharks under the surfboard, right? The macro winds, they can flip. And if the Fed sneezes about rate hikes or liquidity fleas, the dreaded kind of community, infighting, right? Maximalist versus realists, if you will, and realists. And, lawsuits versus partnerships, rumors versus reality. The wedge, it doesn't care. It's only going to track the fear and the greed. Okay, so let me share a quick war story then, right? Back in 2017, I traded a Litecoin descending triangle. Everyone screamed bullish reversal, but the lower trend line cracked and LTC cratered 40% in just 2 days. I learned 2 lessons here, right? Patterns are probabilities and not promises. You should always have an exit plan that's kind of boringly specific. For XRP, right now, my personal plan is simple, right? If a daily candle closes above $2.28 with a 20% volume bump, then I'll consider scaling in. If a candle closes below $1.47, I will step aside like I'm avoiding the splash zone at SeaWorld, right? Discipline, it is not glamorous, but it's cheaper than the FOMO. Meanwhile, of course, Whisper networks are watching whale wallets, right? 2 addresses moved a combined 35 million XRP to an unknown wallet last week, right? Worth roughly 78 million bucks at today's price. Now, could be custody reshuffle? Sure. Could it be secret accumulation, right? Either way, whales rarely juggle bags just for fun. Something is brewing. So here's a quick sidebar on catalysts then, right? Because a chart never actually moves in a vacuum, right? The Bank for International Settlements just floated a report praising real-time cross-border settlement tech, which, and you can guess which ledger kind of they referenced in the footnote 16, right? Yep, that was RippleNet. Meanwhile, of course, the ISO 20022 migration, basically the Rosetta Stone of global payments messaging, hits yet another milestone next quarter. So if big banks flip that switch and realize that XRP's liquidity bridges slots neatly into their new plumbing, well, that narrative tailwind could actually make today's wedge look like the warm-up act. Toss in the rumor mill about a regional CBDC pilot tapping XRP for instant conversion, and suddenly bears need more coffee to stay awake. None of that, of course, is guaranteed, but narrative can add rocket fuel faster than you can say liquidity hub. And the timeline here does matter, right? The apex wedge is maybe a week away, right? Each day is required, or at least each day the required breakout price drops just a smidge, right? The bears know this, the bulls know it. Neutrality kind of evaporates at some point. So picture 2 rams on a mountain's ledge, right? Their horns are locked. Neither are gaining until the ledge narrows to a single file, and someone and something has to yield. That is where we are. Tick, tock. But here is my favorite stat. Historically, when XRP finally breaks a multi-month consolidation, the median first impulsive move is 42% in just 9 days. Now, you can pull up some old charts, 2017 spring, 2020 summer, the 2023 meta run, and the same rhythm, right? Now, if that repeats and the break kind of sets off at $2.28, you'd be eyeballing 324 in less than 2 weeks. That's kind of back to the January highs. Now, imagine the headlines. XRP reclaims $3 as SEC appeal deadline looms. Markets feed on narrative the way that teenagers raid refrigerators. Now, I can taste the panic FOMO in the air if that happens, right? Exchanges will run banners, mainstream outlets, dust off Ripple explainer articles, and my dentist is going to ask me about buying Ripple coins. And sure, as sunshine, somebody on TikTok is going to predict $1,000 XRP by Christmas. And that is when irrational brains must channel Gandalf. You shall not pass without research. So, By the way, if you crave real-time banter, chart doodles, and the occasional dad joke, then you're going to hit that Discord link. It's completely free, it's friendly, and it's where the crowd source sanity during kind of pumpy-dumpy times. Plus, you'll get first dibs on the live stream alerts when I map out my next trade. So let me kind of paint the climax in cinematic color then, right? Imagine tomorrow's daily candle opens at $2.24. The Asian session kind of dribbles sideways. New York wakes up grumpy, but midday London closing kind of funnel of liquidity sweeps price down, whoosh, to $1.95. Right, the crypto Twitter will scream breakdown, shorts will pounce, they'll be all giddy, but on Binance, a stealth bid wall kind of appears out of nowhere, gulping up millions. The price springboards, claws through to $2.28 like kind of wet paper door. It holds at $2.35, dips to retest $2.28, 10 minutes of nail-biting silence, then bang. Green engulfing candle. Volume triples, shorts scatter like pigeons at a fireworks show, and the champagne cork whistles past the moon. Now, the ticker kind of prints $2.65, $2.80, $3, each number louder than the last. Discord lights up like Christmas at Times Square, and somewhere, 𝗕𝗓𝗪 tweets a single emoji of an alarm clock. Could the opposite happen? Of course, right? Maybe liquidity wall is absent. Maybe CPI data completely nukes risk assets. Maybe a whale dumps into thin order books. Price slices 147, stops kind of cascade, and we're testing $1.40 before, $1.20 before breakfast. Now that outcome would hurt, right? But it's not the world kind of ending. It would kind of transform the pattern into a bearish continuation and set the stage for new analysis. And hey, lessons learned cheaper than a college tuition. So with all of this, what are the takeaways? Well, patterns they whisper, they don't scream. XRP's falling wedge is the whisper that grows louder every single day. Whether you trade it, you hold it, or you simply kind of watch it for the memes, the key is going to be preparation. You need to write down your plan, your entry points, your exit points, your stop zones, your profit targets. You need to tape it to your monitor like a grocery list so you don't forget the milk while gazing at the candy aisle. And never forget liquidity's the puppet master here. You got to watch the volume, you got to watch the order books, you got to watch open interest. If they align like planetary orbits, that's your cue. If they diverge like divorced parents at a graduation ceremony, you've got to stay humble. And that's about to kind of find out, at least I should say, we're about to find out if TikTok bears is the prophecy or the punchline. Either way, the clock is almost out of ticks.